to the quantum depths of the poetic universe. Lost in the haystack? What great needle plays, stitches, winds, and paves the strands of the quantum field's types of waves to weave the warp, weft, and woof of our verse into being's fabric of living braids. From quantum non-locality and entanglement, we know that information is more primary than distance, and that things don't have to have the appearance of being near each other to be related or to cause an effect. Everything connected to everything would seem to be a rudimentary perception as far as one could be had by that network. The all-at-once connections, as like in a hologram, might seem to provide for the direction of what goes on in the overall information process. I'm thinking like a yogi and a guru, the entire cosmos situated within me. Quantum non-locality seems to imply that every region of space is in instant and constant contact with every other, perhaps even in time as well. And so the holistic universe is governed by the property of the solitary whole. So that could be the underlying guidance principle. An individual particle might know something about what to do, acting according to all the others. Thus, both our connections and the holistic universes, each having a singular nature, might be the clue. Perhaps they are of the same basis of connections' doings, but separate as two manifestations, each pertaining to a different realm, internal and external, our internal connections giving us future, and the external connections granting future to the universe. I don't know which has the tougher job. Lee Smolin has it that qualia are intrinsic as fundamental, and Chalmers has it that information is fundamental and can express itself in two ways, in consciousness and in matter. Quantum entanglement suggests that each particle has the entire 3D or 4D map of the universe, the information ever updated, the universe being as a single entity. While this may not be perception at the level we have, it may help the universe accomplish something of the movements of particles and fields in their energy, mass, and momentum in some global way that goes forward overall. This may not seem to be saying a whole lot in depth, but since the quantum realm is beneath everything, then one would surmise that it must have all to do with everything that goes on. It is still that the apparent atoms and molecules make the happenings via physical chemical reactions. However, this observation cannot be equated to an explanation, for we must wonder what underlies the chemical mattering and reacting that seems to have a unity of direction to it. I had finished with the yogis and the gurus, and the seers and oracles only know of the future. So I surmised, to uncover the deepness of the present for nature and the conscious animates, I must seek out nature's great poet in her universe in order to fully apprehend the ethereal phantasms of the entangled and enchanted branches in the forest of nature, bringing them into the light. Fortunately, I was a poet myself, and so I could gain entrance to the elfin dell as a human, having to first pass through the neophytes, resisting their temptations and spells. However, the sensual can often take a backseat to the intellectual, although the ecstasy can be similar. I had been there once before, bringing my epic poem Flora Symbolica unto them and writing up the results in elfin legends. And so they had bid me to return one day on a quest. Theirs was more of an ethereal world, whereas mine was often clunky except when I dreamt at night. And it was time for me to wander again, to ask about and better understand the quantum guidance principle, especially learning from those closer to nature and the heavens, they being the elven mixture of spirit angel beings and humans, and thus aware of the causal nexus. I flew to England, to the special forest fairy kingdom, near Galleon's old haunts, and waited for the funnel to open up into the tunnel, and then I came out into their realm and walked on for a full day, seeing no one straight out yet, just sideward waverings, but noting many new colors heretofore unknown, as there were more waves and frequencies here. Here the blessed and haunted old forest, where at the base of an oak I rest, while all about lay wondrous deep coverts, and a green turfed path that leads o'er a crest.
To pass and learn of the connectedness of all things, you must kiss me, after which I'll give you your first clue.
The kiss vibrated deep within my being, and I felt it to my core. And then she related.
All of life's entities embrace one another, including cells, organisms, species, and biotope.
I have to go.
Stay with me tonight.
I was on my way again the next morning, the hours having flown by, as when Einstein had sat next to a pretty girl and had noted the much quicker passage of time over the slower passage of his instant of touching a hot stove. I learned more as I meandered through the labyrinth of the forest.
Hold me tight and love me, and I will unveil some of the poetic structure afterward.
Well, 2 days went by, and she revealed more of my quest.
Living conscious creatures are as a poem, they ever revealing further dimensions and expressing new properties at every level of organization, via strokes, letters, phonemes, words, phrases, and verse.
Verse sentences, in and of a universe of rhythm, reason, rhyme, meter, metric, and melody. This relates to the quantum all.
I was hungry for the continuation of life's quantum poem and hoped I'd be able to move on more quickly, but her allure was testing my resolve. However, she told me something very soon after we'd rubbed our cheeks together.
Meanings in life are not just discovered or gleaned by mere observation, but by understanding through participation. These informationally derived meanings combined to make sense in a non-reductive process, as in the relational reality of life, happening at our semantical level of syntactical information exchange, with no breaking of any of the holistic connections. All this as the epic whole of the book of nature.
It was so still you could hear a nut fall, and the musical strain of mystic call, in soft tones flowered upon the silence, as floating on the surface of the all.
There is the particle and there is the wave, either one forced on us by our observations, being jointly known as the wavicle, all three states of which are truly not the actual reality.
After 2 weeks with her, I had to survive the passage through the land of skulls and roses. Finally, I emerged, unscathed, into the land of spring, and found out more about growth.
There are no objects that are identical with themselves over time, and so the temporal sequence remains open. Nature is a possibility gestalt, with the world forming anew each moment. From the deeper, enfolded realm, which is a unity in the sense of an indivisible potentiality, which can realize itself in many possible ways, it not being a strict sum of the partial states.
'Twas that time of morn, when the exiled rise, thrown to time's earthly bondage through the skies, being for an hour their own heavenly selves, their full glory unhidden by disguise.
It still appears to us, though, that the world consists of parts that have continued from a moment ago, and thus retain their identity in time. Yet they don't, and matter really only appears secondarily as a congealed potentiality.
These forest fairies, dryads, nymphs, and fauns ever flash their nude blossoms on the lawns. They beckon me along, for though the air I pass, thoughts of love, verses, and songs.
In a stable configuration of matter, such as in the inanimate, all the quantum uncertainties are effectively statistically averaged out, this thus ever being deterministic. But in the case of the statically unstable but dynamically stable configurations, the lively features of the underlying quantum structure have a chance to surface to the macroscopic level.
The life of her face is in her deep blue eyes, soft-lipped mouth, and the ears that pointed rise as the moon and stars reflect in a pool, which look as for a lifetime pours surprise.
So there is form before substance, relationality before a materiality that is of a secondary arising and importance, its information being primary. Impressions of realizations are left in our world by the gestalt that lives in the multidimensional spaces of quantum superpositional possibility.
I dive into her eyes, her soulful gait, and worship before her heart's flaming grate, midst flowers in the gardens of her dreams, then whirl back up through her eyes as her mate.
There are no point masses then, but only smudged particles, such as we know of in the space-filling representations of the distribution of electrons in the shells of atoms, called a cloud. What remains unchanged over time are certain properties that find expression in the laws of conservation of energy, momentum, electrical charge, etc., these necessarily being closer to the basis of all.
At last I met the ultimate poet, the elfin queen, who told,
There is a relationship structure that arises not only from the manifold and the complicated interactions of the imagined building blocks of matter, but also one that is substantially more inherent and holistic.
She continued,
So then, the weaves, warps, and woofs of the quantum bits, as strokes makes for the letters of the elementals, as the alphabet of the standard model, forming the words as the atoms that go on to form the molecules as the phrases, on into cells as verse sentences, up to the stanza paragraphs of the organisms, and unto the poem stories of the species, via the unity of life's conscious literature as the unified verse in which we live out our poems.
I'm left with a feeling that's no mere spell, but a fact in heaven that's fancy in hell, of elemental affinity's flame, deeper than thought, much older than speech can tell. I had discovered the Poetic Universe. I headed back home, this taking a few months, never stepping into the same universe twice or even once. Funny thing, I thought, they didn't use poems in what they told me, but then again, they are as living poetic forms themselves. My poetic report. We are both essence and form, as poems versed, ever unveiling our lives' deeper thirsts, as new riches from strokes, letters, phonemes, words, phrases, and sentences, universed. We have rhythm, reason, rhyme, meter, sense, metric, melody, and beauty's true pence revealed through life's participation. From the latent whence into us hence, the weave of the quantum fields as strokes writes the letters of the elemental bytes, the alphabet of the standard model, forming the words as the atoms whose mites merge to form molecules, as phrases onto proteins and cells, as sentences, up to paragraphs of organisms, and unto the stories of the species. In this concordance of literature, we are the cosmos book of adventure as a universe of sentient poems, being both the contained and the container. Our poem is both the thought and the presence, an object born from the profoundest sense, an image of diction, feeling, and rhythm. We're both the existence and the essence. Informationally derived meanings unify in non-reductive gleanings, in a relational reality through the semantical life happenings. Syntactical information exchange, without breaking of the holistic range, reveals the epic whole of nature's poetics, within her requisite of ongoing change. So there's form before gloried substance, relationality before the chance of material impressions rising, traced in our world from the Gestalt's dance. All lives in the multidimensional spaces of basic superpositional traces of possibility, as like the world's probable clouds of distributed paces. What remains unchanged over time are all's properties that find expression as laws of the conservation of energy, momentum, and electric charge, unpaused.